Hi, everybody. I see folks are getting tuned in here.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Joanne, how are you doing?
I'm trying to find the remote so I can turn the TV down. I don't know what the heck I did with it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is another one of days. So we have what, a couple of more minutes?
Yeah, we have about 4 more minutes, Joanne.
I'll be back.
Okay, sounds good. I'll go ahead and mute you in the meantime.
Hi, everybody. Okay.
All right, thanks, Joanne. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Peggy. How are y'all doing? Hi, Dean.
Good.
Hi.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Debbie.
Hello, Mark.
Matt.
Iris.
Hi, Dean.
And Taylor, Hannah, Christine, Denise. Good to see you all. Mary Burke. See you got on earlier.
Hello, Matt. You don't see me, but this is Madeline.
Oh, hey, Madeline, how are you doing? I see you there. You're use the M, but it's under Iris's name. So good to hear your voice, Madeline.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and start recording now so I don't forget to do that. Oh, it's recording already. Okay, good deal. Yeah, I want to record this one especially because we're going to have a call to action at the end of this one, which is to have folks help with the digital relabeling of unit files, so we can get all this stuff online. So, I see our 2 stars are here right now, Kathy and Dean. They've been doing a lot of this digital relabeling and actually putting it into GIS, which I'll give some examples of in a little bit. I'm gonna mute Terry's kids here. So my presentation today is going to be a bit off the cuff. I'm going to be using the data that we have online, which is fun because it means all of you all can access it too. And at the end, I'll send you all some links to some of these maps that we've got. But I don't know what the weather is like in your all's neck of the woods, but it is now freezing rain, and it reminds me of 2 years ago when it was freezing rain and all the trees fell down around and onto the lab, which was absolutely terrifying. So we don't want to relive that. That ice storm, it was shortly before Thanksgiving. So looks like, Mary, you're home, so you're not in the lab to hold the trees up when they fall, which is a good thing. You don't want to be in the lab when the trees fall.
Because weren't there people in the lab when that happened 2 years ago?
Yeah, we were just getting out of the lab when it happened. And
I was in the middle of a one-on-one meeting with an intern, and I watched the tree fall through my window and leapt out of my chair over the desk and grabbed her and threw her on the ground while this tree was falling onto the.
Wow.
Yeah, that was scary.
Yeah, we got out of the lab and building very quickly. The one tree fell in the lab and building, and then after everybody left, that's when about 8 other trees fell down all around the building. So it was quite the storm and quite the day. So we don't want to relive that.
So if a tree falls in the forest, you grab the intern and go under the desk.
Yep,
yeah,
pretty much.
So,
yeah, I'm pretty sure she thought I was attacking her, but
hopefully it was an appropriate point in the conversation. So. All right, well, we're at noon, so we'll go ahead and get started. What I wanted to have us talk about today is some of the digital crowdsourcing that we've done in the past and we're doing right now, and what we're looking towards for the future here at Montpelier. And this what digital crowdsourcing is basically akin to what we do with our programs, but online, which is getting the public involved in the citizen science of collecting data. So as I'll talk about in the PowerPoint in a second, when we do this with our expeditions, it's on site and it's under direct supervision. So that's not it's not really crowdsourcing. That isn't crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is where people are able to work independently, with a minimal amount of training, and are able to help in the collection of scientific data, whether it's collecting raw data, like in some cases there's master naturalists that will go out and they'll be given forms and they can collect data on plants in the woods independently and then begin to compile that. In other cases, what we've done with this crowdsourcing is get our expedition DigMontpelier family involved in the actual data entry of a lot of the records that we've got. And as we'll talk about, we've got thousands of these records, some of which are data entered, a lot of those are not. And what's exciting and what really has brought this to ahead is the ability to use GIS to not only do the data entry, but then once the data entry happens, is to be able to make it public. And it's made it a real incentive to get as much of, in this case, our excavation data digital as possible, because once we've got it entered, then we can put it online and make it available. And we'll talk about some of the things we can do with that as we go on. But one of the facets of crowdsourcing is it does need to be done. Ostensibly, it's designed to be done independently. And there's some projects that we do. For instance, we've got one of our volunteers, Ron, has been data entering and plotting the deed data for the property for a couple of years now. And it's a pretty intensive process, and it involves a specific piece of software that's not online. So technically, while Ron is doing this on his own with a minimal amount of supervision, he's doing it with some licensed software, so it doesn't really make it available to the group. And another example is Leslie Goodery is identifying continuing to identify some of our vessel fragments in terms of transfer wear patterns independently now at home. She's working with Mary on this, and she's able to do this because she has decades of experience, in working with the Transfer Wear Collectors Club in identifying these patterns. So it's, she comes preloaded with a set of information that not a lot of us out there have. So that, while these are examples of individuals doing volunteer work for us, but it's not really crowdsourcing where you can get a lot of people in on the process. And for us, what we've got in terms of crowdsourcing is a little bit more specialized to what I'm going to be talking about for the main part of what we're talking about today, is digitizing our excavation paperwork. And to really do that successfully, what you need to have done is been on one of our digs. And that's where, doing this with, folks that have been on expeditions or are interested in being on expeditions, know enough to have been starting to read about what our excavations are. It makes it possible for this to happen. And knowing what a 5x5 excavation unit is, what the strata cards are, all this makes the data entry of this material that much more tangible and interesting. Whereas if you didn't have any interest in archaeology, you probably wouldn't want to be doing data entry of our strata records. It wouldn't hold that much relevance to you. So but for some of the records that we've got, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share screens with you all and start my PowerPoint here and go into a little bit about what we've been up to with this. So again, like I said in the beginning, what we do at Montpelier is find ways to do citizen science. And the citizen science that we do during an expedition, for example, whether it's in the lab, at the site, doing the reconstruction programs or a metal detector survey. What that involves is, you know, on-site work, but where you're working one-on-one with the staff. So in many ways, that is, you know, you join the team and you're part of you know, join the team of what we're doing out there at the site or in the lab. And so that's not really crowdsourcing, because it's not people working independently collecting data on their own. But what this generates, though, is, you know, when you think about, you know, the archaeology that we do, every step of our expeditions is generating paperwork, you know, whether it's excavating units and we're taking photographs and filling out the forms that you all see us do and have taken part in, when we're collecting the artifacts or organizing these into different, you know, the different artifact types and bagging them. And then finally, you know, all this stuff goes to the lab. And during the expedition programs, you know, you all help with the washing of the artifacts, but then we also have the lab programs where you actually help in the cataloging. And so again, all this is generating paperwork. And for, you know, our excavations, every single layer that we excavate, for example, this is a shot of one of our former archaeologists working in the cellar of the main house. Every single layer that we excavate generates paperwork, everything from profiles to plan views to strata cards, and of course, photographs. And as I'll show you in a couple of minutes, you know, when you look at the number of units we've excavated, you know, over 2,000 units at the main house alone, and each unit having, you know, anywhere between 5 to 6 layers, we're talking, you know, tens of thousands of records that need to be worked on and digitized. Now that'll be the main thing that we'll be touching on today is the digitization of this paperwork. Of course, in the lab, you know, the main paperwork that's created, the bulk of it is the catalog sheets. There's other paperwork that's generated that you all have been exposed to, such as vessel analysis, and the vessel forms that Mary fills out. And those we data enter in-house. But the catalog sheets, there are, you know, literally thousands of these. In fact, the number that's on here, the DE code in the upper right-hand corner, you know, this one is up to, we're up to 9,000 in this case, and this was back in 2019. Mary, if you're on, do you know what DE code we're on right now? Well, I'm not sure if Mary has her ears on, but it's in the tens of thousands of sheets. And in terms of, I'll talk about what we do with how we do that data entry and how we've done it in the past. But the reason why we ostensibly want to get all this material data entered is it allows us to do the kind of analysis that we use, such as distribution analysis, such as this plot of window glass that Terry's done for the South Yard, looking at, you know, window placement and destruction of the buildings. And what we're able to do is, once all these sheets are digitized and entered into the database, is we can link the individual units, like for example, MT 810 right here with a number of window glass fragments, put that all the way across a map and see the distribution of window glass at the site. And in other cases, such as what Hannah did for her analysis of the ceramic vessels, is she was able to take the ceramic vessels and plot them in GIS, and then look at individual vessels, you know, where all their fragments occur, and really analyze and assess the movement of sherds across the landscape. So, you know, you can go from very broad spatial analyses to very specific that combine, you know, assemblage level analysis with distribution of artifacts. And it's the power of the computer that really allows this to happen. But in order to get it into the computer, it's got to be data entered. So with that, you know, traditionally how we did this data entry for many years was with staff. So for example, in the lab, you know, every winter, you know, staff and interns would spend a good chunk of their winter behind the computer doing data entry. And a couple of years ago, Terry, I think you were at a conference at MSU and you ran into a friend of yours who runs the MicroPast with the Museum of London, Terry?
It's it was between the University College of London and the British Museum worked on it together.
Okay.
to build it. Yeah.
And this is a screenshot of the MicroPass. Some of you might have been involved in doing the data entry, which is basically on a single screen, the catalog sheet will come up, and then the volunteers can enter the information, you know, and it's all lined up exactly where it needs to go. And in the MicroPass website, there's actually a description of what all these catalog entries mean, so people can, you know, begin to get a sense of what these are. And for this project, with working with the British Museum, we're able to actually use a global network of volunteers to do this data entry, because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, that's what MicroPass is designed to do, is with a, you know, just, you know, support on a website, you would be able to have people begin to do this data entry. And we did this for many years, especially when we were running 2 projects at once and we were excavating in the wintertime. We had, you know, Mary did not have a chance to keep up with the data entry with staff because they were in the field. So what Mary and Ben ended up doing is putting, you know, scanning all the data sheets, putting them on MicroPass, and you know, over a period of months, you know, the various assemblage groupings would get data entered. And MicroPass works really well when you've got a big block of data, but where we're at right now with the overseer's house and the, you know, the lower amount of excavations we've been doing this season, what Mary's going to be doing is doing this data entry with staff and herself, because it takes a lot of work to get these data sheets up on MicroPass and then to process it to get it into our database, which is an Access database. So in some cases, you know, the crowdsourcing we've done with, especially with these catalog sheets, it's got to be some specific needs that we've got. Like in this case, this was a lot of sheets, thousands of sheets that needed to be data entered, and no staff able to be able to do it. So different applications for different needs with this. And what we're doing right now with the crowdsourcing involves all of our data records. And so, for example, this example that I showed just before, which is the paperwork that's associated from a single strata in the cellar. And we, as many of y'all know, in some of the lunch and learns we've talked about this, we got a grant from the Institute for Museum Library Services to put all of the data records, the field records, digitally into GIS. And this is incredibly useful because it allows, you know, especially with GIS, it allows all this data to be made available online. And I'll show you some examples of this in 1 second. But where all this data resides right now, and really to get a sense of the bulk of this data, I'm going to switch over to our GIS map here. And I've got this in 3D so you can see where the main house is, where the south yard is, all the buildings here. So here's the south kitchen that's just being built. You can see you know, some photos of these buildings. Here's the north dwelling right here. So here's the south yard. This is, you know, down in this direction is where the archaeology lab is, and your office and lab is located. But for the main house, OR 249, the Montpelier main house, all these red squares, of course, are our 5x5 units. And these units are literally everywhere. They're not only, you know, across the south yard, in the southwest yard, in the front yard, and up in the north where the north kitchen was, but also even in the house. So if I turn off the roof of the main house here, you can see how up in the and even inside the cellar, you've got all these units that are present. And let's see, I've got some strange shapes coming in here, but for each one of these squares, we have, you know, each one of these squares probably has about 100 to 120 record files associated with it. So for example, with the unit that's right here, which is MT988, this unit's records compiled into a unit summary, and you can see this here. This has 57 records associated with it, and this is everything from, the the photos that were taken of the unit, the stratum cards. Every single strata has its own card and set of photographs. There's plan views that are in here. All these records, in order to get it into a single PDF, and then have these be able to be associated with this unit square, all these had to be data entered and digitized. And so for what this looks like in terms of the records that are out there, I'm going to pull this down a little bit. What we've been able to do is get all these records scanned. In the case of the bunker and the portico, we've been able to get these records scanned and put into the Google Drive. And what volunteers have done is they've gone through and taken these unnamed files and actually labeled them with with metadata in the file name that allows them to be associated with the map. So for example, for MT988, whose square is right here, in this folder right here, all of these files are named MT988, but then the next area is labeled with the strata. So in this case, this is feature 492, which is this subfloor pit, and layer D within that subfloor pit. And so that gives you the strata within the unit. And then for MT988 feature 492D, not only do you have multiple photographs, but you also have drawings and excavation cards. So what's after this next period is the type of paperwork that's here, whether it's a photo, and this is, in this case, it's photo 1, 2, and 3. This is for plan view, and then this one, CA, is for card. And then all this is, the process for labeling all these is described in a document that we've got that talks about, what this nomenclature is for labeling these digital files. And then once these digital, in this nomenclature, what we've got in this manual, the unit record naming manual for pre-2008 units, once you look at this and then look at these individual unit files, what you begin to see is, and especially looking at some examples, you can see it's pretty straightforward to understand how to label these, because a lot of these, like for example, the cards, they have the unit number described on it as well as the stratum, and that allows you to put that information in the file name right there. And since it's a card, it gets the term CA for card for the record type. Other ones, like for example, this photo of strata 0, it's let's see, for stratum, this is a bottom. Yeah, for this one, for MT407.F1A, this unit right here has on the label board, the photo board, what unit it is and what strata it is, and that gives gives you the information to be able to put this into the file name, and then in this case it gets a PH for photo. So as always, there's going to be exceptions to this rule, and that's where part of the support network for this sort of crowdsourcing doesn't just involve having a manual like the unit record naming manual, but also a network of people that you can email and call on. And so what we've been able to do with this project is, when folks have a question, you'll notice that in this in the folder structure, there's a folder for completed, and then there's also one for problems. Is you can put an email out there asking a question, and then you can put that unit into a problem folder. And so what we do is we go through the problem folder and correct those. So Taylor and Hannah were involved in going through the problem folder, but we combine that with being able to have you all email us and ask individual questions so you know what the solution to the problem is. So long and the short of this is to support this kind of crowdsourcing, what we found we needed to do is not only have a manual that allows for basic training, but then have an online way to answer questions as they come up. And what's really important with this, is especially as Dean and Kathy can tell you, is to be able to have these questions either answered immediately or have a way to resolve the problem. Otherwise, volunteers get really frustrated and they feel like, they get stuck and they can't go anywhere else with it. So that's where, over the past 6 months of doing this, we've learned how to create a workflow that allows people to, be able to either answer their questions from the manual, have their questions answered through emailing us, or just put them into a problem folder that we can address later, and then they can keep on going with what they're doing. And occasionally what we've done is even had Zoom sessions where we'll go in and like talk about some of the issues that people have had to doing this kind of labeling. So once all these unit folders are labeled, what we're able to do is actually bring all of these this data into a single map. So for example, when you go back to this large map of where the main house is, surrounded by all these 5x5 units, once all of the data records for every single one of these units is relabeled in their individual folders, what we're able to do is combine that data into a GIS map. So when you click on this individual record, so for example, like MT988, what it has is either a single file that has all the data attached to it, such as this PDF with all the data records. Or what we've also done is once these data records have been properly labeled, then what we can do is go in and actually start digitizing the individual layers that are in each of these units. So for example, if we go to MT988 and we go to the individual stratum that are there, you can see that stratum O has been digitized as its own polygon, as its own shape, the shape of the excavation as it was in the field. And then its photos are there as well as its strata card. So you can go through these records and see the individual strata that were excavated. So for instance, there's a total of 8 records in MT988 that all have a complex set of data. This is only part of the data that I've got listed here. Some of this work for these individual units was done by volunteers in terms of relabeling the unit records, the file names, and a lot of the work was done by Hannah and Taylor in terms of actually digitizing the strata card and putting all the information in the strata card into individual fields. And some of our two top tier crowdsourcers, Dean and Kathy, have actually begun to do this on their own for the bunker. So for example, over at the bunker, they've got their own set of records that they're digitizing, in which, for example, like MT685, there's a total of 11 records that Kathy and Dean have got into GIS. And what's really great about getting these individual records for each strata into GIS is once it's in GIS, it's online. And once it's online, it means we can make it available to the public. So for all of these areas that are in the light blue here, and then in this kind of light green in here, these are all completely digitized. So if we have someone, for instance, that's interested in subfloor pits in the cellar, what we can do is send him or her a complete record of all the information about those subfloor pits from the excavation. So not only do we have a report that summarizes this that we can send them, but they can actually go to the individual data records. And once we get the individual unit strata entered into GIS, that's when we're able to associate all the catalog data with each one of these. And then what we've never been able to really do in terms of analysis with a lot of this data is analyze the data on a strata by strata level in a way that's been feasible to do. But with GIS, we can finally do this. And this means it can be done not only by us, but by anybody. And so that's really important for making this data available for folks, working on their dissertations or master's theses. They don't even have to come to Montpelier to get this data. They can get it online. And this is one of the key selling points of the IMLS grant we got to digitize all of the records for the main house restoration. And part of this is not only making this data available to researchers, but then also making it available to the public in terms of story maps. So for instance, now that we've got all this data, that Hannah and Taylor have entered, and the volunteers have, relabeled all the records for each unit, what we're able to do is create story maps of, particular sets of features, like some of the architectural features of the cellar that allowed us to restore the cellar to what it looks like today. And then also some items that hold a lot of information about the African-American community, the enslaved Americans who are here working at Montpelier, such as these subfloor pits that we found all across the cellar. So all of a sudden, this data can be, very much more accessible and a lot more real. But for this project, what we've got left to do is, a lot of records. So if you look back at this overall map, let me turn the roof on in the main house here so it looks like an actual building. There's a lot of work that we need to do to get all of these individual the scanned and digitized scanned records that need to be relabeled for the front yard, for a lot of these other projects areas labeled. And once they're labeled, what we're able to do is generate the kind of maps that are in the cellar. We can do this either automatically with just the size of the units, or we can do it the way that Hannah and Taylor are doing it for the bunker, or for the basement and the portico, but then also that Dean and Kathy are doing it for the bunker. So there's once this stuff is digitized, it allows for all kinds of possibilities. Now, the other sort of crowdsourcing that we're looking to do in the future at Montpelier, and we'll get back and talk about how to get involved with this project, but one of the set of crowdsourcing data we're interested in doing on the property involves some of the trees that are on the property. So for example, we recently did a 3-day program in the woods of Montpelier. Here's the main house right here. This is all in the East Woods right here. And part of this project was to experiment with going out and actually identifying trees and mapping them. And so, for example, what we've got right here, this is in the middle of a woodlot. What we've got is a line of tulip poplar trees that are here. And what we did with volunteers over the 3-day program is we actually went out and we mapped the trees. We got the diameter and the species of the trees, took photographs of them, and then put them into GIS. And this is really kind of a test balloon to see how this would work. And what we'd like to do one day is actually have master naturalists be able to go out into the woods and do this on their own and basically catalog all the trees that are bigger than 2.5 feet in diameter. And so, for example, in this section of woods right in here in the East Woods, in the LiDAR, you can see this is the edge of the woodlot in here. And then when you zoom in, what you can see is the actual tree locations. All these dimples are individual trees that are out there that need to be mapped in using a smartphone when you're out there, and then capture the diameter and the species and get all these cataloged. And one thing that I think that's going to help us a lot is having once there's 5G networking is available on the property, where you'll be able to more accurately use your phone to map in where you're at. I think this is going to make this project a lot more feasible. But once we do this, what it's going to give us is a complete inventory of old growth trees, like these line of tulip poplars right here, that what we call witness trees, and we're calling the trees that are over 160 years old witnesses to the enslaved Americans' labor that were here at Montpelier. And so what we wanted to be able to do is map these trees in and then be able to select some of these for coring for more detailed analyses. But what we need to have first is an inventory of all these trees. So that, along with the kind of identification of features that are out there and photographing some of the LiDAR features that we have. There's just all kinds of possibilities with this. But I think we're a couple of years out from this before we can have really the kind of 5G technology that allow us to to be accurately place yourselves on the landscape in relationship either to the trees or to the features that are out there. So that's a little more in the future. But what we're working on right now with the crowdsourcing is really getting all of our excavation data entered. And this is, again, what this project involves is, relabeling all of the photos that we've got for all these units. And what I was interested in with the webinar today was to kind of get a sense of, for those of you all that have done this unit labeling process, if you could describe what it's like, for others, and then also get a sense of, level of interest that you all might have in this. So I'm gonna stop sharing right now. We could go back to the screen sharing if you want, but just we could have some folks report out on what it was like to do some of this relabeling of unit data, or if anybody has any questions about this.
Matt, before we get into that, I did just want to say that there is you mentioned a couple different benefits of having this stuff, all this information data entered into GIS. But the one that you didn't mention is that it helps us do better research. This is it's visually really awesome looking, and it's a great way for us to collect together all of our records and access them and to do story maps and things like that. But this is all data that's never been in a database before. The things on all of these Strat records is not stuff that has made it into our access database before, and so we're going to be able to do better research because the data we're going to be able to manipulate the data in different ways and look at it in new ways that we haven't been able to before, and that's going to help us learn just so much more about all the people who lived and worked at Montpelier. So not only are you going to help us tell the stories better that we already know how to tell, but we're going to get to discover new stories through more detailed and thorough research. So this is really critical and helpful in many, many different ways.
Yeah, your point, Terry, is so obvious and was so right in front of me that I didn't even make it, because I was lost in the trees. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Now that we're living, as a department, if we want to access a map to the units or to a feature, in the past, what we do is we'd either go to the physical records to find them or go into AutoCAD. And that was a huge roadblock because I was about the only one that knew how to use AutoCAD. And by putting all this into GIS, it means that every single staff person has access to it because it's an online map that you can look at and just click on. But like Terry was saying, one thing we don't have, like if I go back to the map right here, is if I go and click on a lot of these records right here in this 3D map, what you'll notice is that a lot of this data is empty. So for example, there is no let's see, unit summary for so many of these, because while we've got all these unit records scanned, for example, for the front yard, what we don't have is all of them labeled by their unit number and strata, so they could be associated with this particular polygon. Once that's done, we can almost instantly create that relationship, which is super exciting. And that's where, going through all these records and putting these names with it, in a lot of cases, for folks that are doing this, it's like you're getting to see records of excavations that no one has seen before, except for the folks doing the excavations back, in this case, in 2002. And then also with having the maps and the reports, that as you're doing this, you're able to really, you're able to kind of actually redo the excavations as they occurred 15 to 20 years ago. So it's kind of like a rediscovery of what was found at each of these areas. So, and once they're in, you know, just it gives us access to this. Right now, if we need to access, if we're trying to find units for the front yard or even the south yard, we have them on the Google Drive, maybe in some cases we do, but to find them and access them, you got to go through about 4 steps. And if you're trying to do that, looking for like 5 different errors or 5 different types of data, that the travel time to find those records gets steadily larger, and all of a sudden it's just not feasible to do. But once it's in one-stop shopping, like in GIS, then all of a sudden, like Terry was saying, we're able to do more work better and do more research that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So and by doing that, what we can do is we can start to synthesize this data and actually put the results of that data online as story maps and other bits of information.
Yeah, no, it builds on each other, because not only are you all able to help us do work that we'd otherwise be doing, which takes up our time and resources, right, is then the research even becomes more efficient on top of it. So anyway.
So yeah, Dean.
Go ahead. Dean was about to say something. Sorry.
Matt? Yeah, I was just going to say, I really agree with you on this concept of sort of living through the excavations, or, you know, when I do the relabeling and I'm seeing all the documents, including the photos, I mean, I really get a sense of, you know, sort of being there. Of course, I wasn't there, you know, when these things were done initially, but you know, it really, I enjoy going through the different layers of each unit and seeing what was there. And for me, it's kind of, you know, I'm discovering it for myself for the first time, and I think that's really fun. I find it's, excuse me, just yeah,
how long would you usually spend on this per day?
Okay, I found for me between 1 and 2 hours per day, probably maybe every other day, because they're, you know, it depends on what I'm busy doing at home, you know. But you know, either I would say, you know, I would like to be able to do it for 1 or 2 hours a day every day. I think that would probably be enough, because you know, you sort of for me, I just I need to have a pretty close attention span to what I'm doing. I need to really watch, you know, you need to be accurate when you're doing this kind of thing. So, you know, that's my attention span for this kind of thing, is maybe 2 hours per day.
And looking at, everybody puts in their hours into a spreadsheet. You've got about 80 hours on this, and Kathy has about 100 and I think 140. Kathy, you spent about that same, you did like about an hour per day normally, don't you?
I try, and you know, having worked on both projects, the relabeling, which took up the spring until July, and then transferring over to the transcribing of the Strat cards starting in September. You know, they're 2 different kinds of projects entirely, and I find that the transcribing is a little slower, and that I can't, you know, you get a little tired, because it's one thing to just look at a picture or a photo, and you know, here it's in this Strat, it's this, it's number so and so. It's a formula of relabeling. The problem with the transcribing of the Strat cards, you're reading somebody else's handwriting. Oftentimes the scan is not very clear, and you're trying to learn in different things. I'm getting really good understanding Mosaic numbers and things like that, but it's more tedious to a point where, and you have to be more accurate, because you are transcribing letter for letter what is on the Strat card. So I find that generally, if it's a short card or a long card, maybe it'll take me 15 minutes per card. And sometimes like an hour of doing like 4 or 5 cards is about enough, because then I don't want to get sloppy, because you want to try to be as accurate as possible on those things to do it. And there's always some exception to the rule and something like that. So, but they're fun because, I always love it when I get to the line of the artifacts and all the stuff that had been found on the site. And, the color, you get to see that the color of the soil as you're digging through it like that. So it's really fascinating because you're doing something totally different. You don't have the photos there. You don't have anything else. You don't have, but it's fun. But as I say, it's a little slower going. And a good day is you go into a unit and there's only like 2 cards. Woo! A bad day is 25 cards.
Yeah.
I never will get out of some units.
Yeah, the bunker definitely had that with some of the units being 5 feet deep. So some of the deeper units. And for Dean and Kathy, what did you all feel was the biggest learning curve in doing, especially the unit relabeling? Because that's what we need the most of right now for getting to the next phase, is actually renaming the unit the scans of the unit records, the cards and the opening and closing shots, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm still tackling that, as you know, and I don't know, it's sort of, I have to, using the equipment I have at home, I have to set it up so I can look at the card on my iPad and then work on my, do the entry on the laptop. And I mean, it's simple enough. It's just, I've got to get back to, making that work for me so that I can do it comfortably. I like to feel like when I open it up, turn it on, and start working on it, that I'm comfortable with the way it works. And I haven't gotten there yet with that kind of relabeling. The other one, I was, the relabeling of, each of the, the photos and, sorting that all out. I got, so that I was pretty comfortable with that. And then your point about, having, if you get stuck as a volunteer doing this, it's nice to have someone to go to, or someone or some process through which you can get a, reasonably quick answer on where to go or how to do it. And you made that point earlier, Matt. So I think that's a good point.
Well, one of my favorite parts of the project is, writing, like with you and Kathy, getting notes from you all about some trouble you've had, and then being able to answer it and being able to keep in touch. So it's a fun way to keep in touch. I know Hannah and Taylor spent, a lot of time answering your all's questions when they were in the thick of it in the spring, and we'll probably be getting back to it this winter. So, but it is a nice way to stay in touch. Like I said, is one of my more favorite parts of it. Let's see, Paul asked a question. Has there been any talk about potentially georeferencing the Strat photos to create a photo mosaic in GIS? Yeah, we have actually done that in the cellar, and what we found is that basically we needed to make the photos into grayscale photos, because the color variations with the lighting made it more noticeable, but the color variation between photos and the actual excavated features. And unfortunately, when we did that photography, and we still don't do this, is we didn't use a color chips, so then we could standardize the color later on. A lot of reason we don't do this in the field is because Terry can just take the drone up and take a shot at the end, and then boom, you've got a photo mosaic like that. And then also what we're doing now is doing photogrammetry and then also LiDAR scans of the site at the end. But you're absolutely right, Paul, for some of these older excavations, doing a photo mosaic, even in grayscale with these individual units, is incredibly useful. And I've got your all's emails from the registration. I'll send you all some examples of these photo mosaics. When we're send photo mosaic. When we're doing this IMLS project to digitize the excavations from the restoration of the main house, one thing that we're going to be doing is have records that are associated with individual units, like all the unit records all together in a single PDF or all in, those individual squares on the map. But then also have records that are tied to the rooms as a whole that we excavated. And that record for each room will have a photo mosaic associated with it, because we compiled those during the mansion restoration. And for those that we don't, we can compile it, just like you said, from the individual units. So what I'll do is I'll send you all some information on what we've been able to do with the IMLS project with this digitized data. Right now we're creating a web page through GIS that has all this information in kind of one-stop shopping. So I'll send you the link to that. We're just beginning to build that right now, because we're, Hannah and Taylor are still entering all the unit records from what many of you all did with the relabeling of the scans. And with the cellar and cellar spaces of the main house, with the IMLS grant, we're actually able to do a complete and thorough analysis of all the records, going beyond even unit strata, but looking at features, looking at the elevations that were taken during the excavations, the site strata. We're going to be doing an exhaustive set of layers for all this information. And what we're looking to do with this is not only, digitize and make digitally available everything from the main house restoration, but then use this as a model going forward for what we do with the rest of the data. And some of our archive data, but then in the field today, since last year, we've been collecting this data live on iPads. And next in January, Terry's going to be talking about the dashboard he's created for these units, and the kind of information we're able to get today with this data actually being collected in the field paperless. So these two projects are actually very intimately related. The digitization of our archival data, our legacy data with all the previous excavations that we've done, and then capturing the data in the field digitally without any paperwork, like some of y'all have seen, come on the overseer's house dig.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that in the new year, but it is kind of the bookend to this conversation, because it's moving, instead of moving forward where we're constantly having to do digitizing of paper, everything we're collecting now, we're skipping this step and going right to it. So you'll kind of be able to see, hopefully, what I'll have for you in January will be some of what we're going to be able to do with all the things that you all are crowdsourcing right now, if that makes sense. So it's sort of a glimpse into the future for the stuff that you all are digitizing up around the main house.
Yeah, we got these two projects to coincide almost miraculously. We didn't exactly plan it, but we did plan it, but it's worked out really well. Like what we're doing with the IMLS project with the cellar spaces is helping us understand what to do with the data that we're collecting through paperless techniques, like Terry's going to talk about at the overseers, and vice versa. The two are just completely feeding off each other, which is great. And it's allowing us, with the IMLS grant, with that being a government grant, we're actually able to spend the time to create, the story maps and the other digital products in GIS that's going to help us with the future for the overseer and the home farm project. And then as you all are able to help us digitize in these other records, we'll basically have preset forms that we can put all this data into and have it appear. And what we're planning on doing is using this as a way to show the potential of our data to apply for even more grants like IMLS, to do even more integrated work with a lot of this data. So this, it's kind of we can't really get started until a lot of the photos and scanned records are relabeled. And there's a lot of excavations that we've done through the years that really aren't grant worthy. For example, like when we were doing mitigation of utility lines during the main house restoration, that is not as sexy or data compelling as, say, the South Yard excavations. The South Yard excavations, we definitely want to do a combined grant with the Montpelier Descendant Committee and our department to apply, for example, to IMLS to digitize all of those records and create, story maps and data access for, for the community and for Montpelier to be able to access those sets of records. Those are like the South Yard would be a project that would be very much right up the line of NEH or IMLS. But there's a lot of these excavations that we've done through the years, like even with the Pine Alley and the Grove. I mean, it was for a pretty specific purpose that was useful to Montpelier, but to get that done, having the help of you all to get that relabeled makes it so that data, we can understand even more about it. And by understanding more, we can up the potential of that data to actually apply for grants to do more analysis of it. But kind of to get over that hump, we need to have a lot of this, the baseline relabeling of data done that we don't have the staff time to do because of, just limited resources. So, well, during COVID, what COVID has done with us is made us look critically on how to get you or expedition family involved in this process, because this year not a lot of people have been able to come out. But what it's really done is showed us the potential for what some of this online participatory, crowdsourcing data could do for the future forever. And we're super excited about it. So, like COVID, it's had a silver lining for many folks in terms of doing this, many institutions of, looking for digital ways to do this. So, does anybody have any questions about, how to get involved? What I'll do for getting involved, I will send an email out to everybody with, if you're interested, to let me know, and I'll send you some examples of some of the projects we're doing right now. Like we've got there's a webinar that I did on digitizing that I'll send out. And if you're interested, get a hold of me. And what we could do is we could do a special webinar for those folks that are interested in doing some of this crowdsourcing and data entry. And we could drill into the nitty-gritty detail of all this instead of, we're just kind of skimming the surface right here, but get into the details on this. So yeah,
Matt, also worth noting, just to kind of super nuts and bolts, the time that you all put towards this as volunteers goes towards the match for the IMLS. So you are in a very, again, dollars and cents kind of way, helping us also fulfill the grant, our grant obligations from a funding standpoint too. We can use volunteer time towards that match, which is huge and really important also. So you are helping us in many, many different levels.
And this counts as volunteer time towards Montpelier. So getting the benefits that volunteers get at Montpelier. So like during the expedition, your time spent at Montpelier as an expeditioner isn't treated as volunteer time because it's part of a program. But this is truly volunteer time, like you're volunteering in the lab. So it's a huge help for what we're doing. So
yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Sorry, I had my camera off because I'm having a 2-year-old's having a meltdown.
Oh, no.
But so if you are going to do some of this work, please be sure to track your hours, because we do use them for the match, but we also use them for amazing things like getting you presents in February to thank you for your work, and all of the other kind of traditional volunteer family things that we do within the department, and also on the property. So we have the strongest volunteer core of any department on the entire property, so much so that all of the other departments come to try to ask us if we have volunteers we can lend to them. And even our HR department, where the volunteering is centered, has invited us to talk to them about how to keep volunteers and use volunteers. So sort of the gold standard of volunteering is the archaeology volunteers, because everyone does such a great job. So we want to make sure that all of our virtual volunteers are taken care of and recognized in the same way across the property.
Oh, thanks, Mary. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the culture of our expeditions in terms of being the DigMontpelier family, Mary's really brought that through with the lab volunteers, and it's the same culture we have with, the volunteers on this project. Well, the MicroPass project was great in terms of getting a lot of data done. We didn't have a lot of interaction with folks because it's such an independent project, and it's so you're able to do it pretty much without any kind of input. But this project, I mean, I personally love getting questions about old excavation units, because I don't know, I like thinking about the old excavation units. It just brings back a lot of fond memories for me. So it's something we all, like to do, and it keeps us involved with all of you all. I think that is, like Mary was getting at, it's one of the big benefits I feel that I really enjoy with this. So love to get, I see some of our former staff are here, like Caitlin. Hi, Caitlin. Getting some of our former staff involved too would be really fun. I've been, so there's just all kinds of possibilities with this. It's, this is the N that's part of Learn, that network is, and what we've found is, with these digital networking, we've been able to get folks over this year, like, Patricia and Mark, who want to come on programs now. So it's really some really nice benefits from all this. So, well, if no one else has any questions, I'll go ahead and send you all information on what we've got for the digital project, both some of the story maps that we've got, but then also some examples like the relabeling guide, the unit relabeling guide, and a little more detail. And I won't get into a crazy amount of detail, but for those of you all that are interested in taking part in this, send me an email saying that you're interested in it. And then we'll get, after the new year, we'll get a webinar together to talk about how to, kick this off. And what's great is with Dean and Kathy as alumni in this process, there's probably a lot of questions that they could answer as well. And having an email chain going where people could ask questions or do it in Google Docs, it'd be a real nice way to have a lot of interaction. So, but well, thanks for tuning in and what seems like a terribly arcane and bizarre subject, which is like relabeling digital files. But it really, hopefully you get a sense of how excited we are about it and why we're excited about it. This is, going to lead to some really making all this available open and on the web, which is super exciting. So, but
we can do an hour on anything. So
that's true, but this, this is really excited about it. So
I mean, because we're always so excited about everything.
Yeah, that's true.
We can do an hour on it. Yeah.
But
I did just want to note. I just wanted to note for every. Oh,
go ahead, Terry.
I just wanted to note, I put a link in the chat, but all of the lunch and learns from the whole summer we've compiled into a page on the Digital Doorway site, so you can go back and revisit all your favorite lunches. If you are missing us in between Wednesdays, you can go back and fill in the gaps with anything you may have missed. And then you can also on that page register for the one that's going to be in January, and we'll keep updating that page with the new lunch and learns as we add them throughout the year. These have been a lot of fun for us, so we're going to keep doing them. So you all keep showing up. So
yeah, thanks for being loyal supporters, everybody. So, well, thank you all so much for participating today. I'll send the email out with that link that Terry was talking about in case you missed it. And then also, how you can get involved with this. So this is kind of a fun lunch and learn because there's actually a takeaway from it. But if we do or don't communicate before the holidays, have a wonderful holiday, everybody. And look forward to seeing you all in the new year at the next lunch and learn. So, all right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
Good talking with you all. Good seeing you all's faces.
Matt.
Wonderful way to close out the year, you guys.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Mary. Everybody.
Bye, y'all. Happy holidays. Hi, Joanne. Bye, Joanne. I miss you.
Bye-bye. This is
Bye,
Carol.
Carol.
Love you.
Nice
You
to
guys
see you. My
too.
video wasn't
Bye,
working.
Caitlin.
Thank you.
See you.
Great holiday.
Happy
Thanks, Susan.
Be
Bye.
well, everybody.
Bye, you guys. Happy holidays.
Oh, bye, Debbie.
Bye, Debbie.
Happy holidays.
See you, Dean.
Bye, Dean.
Oh, Debbie's still on. She got you, Peggy. So
Oh, hi, Debbie. Bye.
Bye, bye.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Keep
I
in
really
touch.
enjoy seeing everyone. And Matt, I spend a lot of time on the computer. I have a lot of organizations I'm involved in. I would love to do data entry, but I just don't feel good at it.
I got you. Well, whatever you can do, Carolyn, would be great. It's nice seeing your face on these lunch and learns. And Wendy, didn't get to say hello to you, but good to see you as well, Wendy. So, and Christine as well. So, all right. Well, I'll send you all a link to this as well as some of the other information. Good seeing you all.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.